Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Rodriguez and I'm going to discuss Chapter 12, Contemporary Views of Leadership in Organizations. Chapter 11 we discussed more traditional views, and we're going to go on to Chapter 12 to talk about contemporary views and then into the future. I'm very excited to talk about this chapter because I'm personally very excited about leadership and just learning how I can personally become a more inspiring leader and how I can know my people better. So I'm really excited about this chapter, and if you'll follow me to slide number 2, we're going to do an overview of Chapter 12 just so we know where we're going. We're going to start with 2 new situational theories of leadership, and then we'll go into leadership from the eyes of followers. Then we'll go to alternatives to leadership. I'm excited about that because that's something I hadn't heard about before, so we'll discuss that for a little while, and then we'll go into the changing nature of leadership, and then into the future with emerging issues in leadership. If you'll follow me to number 3, we'll talk about the leader-member exchange model. This is all based on a vertical dyad, which is a superior-subordinate pair, and the model explains the importance of variable relationships between supervisors and their subordinates. So supervisors establish a special relationship with a small number of people called the in-group, and there's also an out-group. It's not found out yet in studies why certain people are in the in-group and certain people are in the out-group, but the in-group receives special duties, more responsibility, more autonomy, and the out-group does not receive that. They receive less time from the supervisor, less attention, and they're not in the loop. So this is one of the first new theories. Then we're going to talk about the Hersey-Blanchard model. That is the other one. It is based on the premise that leader behavior depends on the readiness of the leader's followers. And so as the readiness of the followers increases, the leader's style should increase as well. So if the subordinate has a low readiness, there should be a telling style from the leader, But if it's a low to moderate readiness, then the leader should have a selling style, and it moves up to a moderate to high readiness from the follower. It should be more of a participating style with the leader. Then when you get to follower readiness that is very high, you should have more of a delegating style. And so the whole model is based off of changing readiness by the leader's followers. Then the leadership style should change as well. If you'll follow me to number 4, we're going to talk about leadership through the eyes of followers. I'm very, very excited about this as well. Transformational leadership. By the book, the definition is the set of abilities that allows the leader to recognize the need for change, to create a vision, to guide that change, and to execute that change effectively. So the opposite of transformational leadership is transactional leadership. That's only based on routine, regiment, and getting things done. And then transformational leadership, on the other hand, is the skills that allows the leader to recognize that need for change, create that vision, and then execute that change. But another part of effective leadership is the ability to see which approach is needed. This is super interesting to me. I had a class on transformational leadership last year as well. I was an RA last year living on campus at Liberty University, and we go through a leadership training program. In the second semester, the whole training program was based on transformational leadership in the context of RA, but also in the context of life. And so I was looking through my journal that I have right here, actually, of things that I had written down in that class about transformational leadership. And this one really stuck out to me. It was in March 2018, about how do we empower leaders? By clarity and trust, and communicating with clarity and extending that trust, and saying that we see you and we want to help you work towards this new direction that you want to go. And that's a leader saying that to a subordinate. And then surrendering control to the Lord. As a Christian, I believe that's one of the most important parts of transformational leadership, is praying and asking the Lord to give you that vision and help you execute that vision, and also empowering the people below you. And so it is so important to find that line between transactional and transformational. We want to be that transformational leader, but there are certain aspects of transactional leadership that are important so that we can get things done. So we'll talk a little bit more about transactional and transformational leadership in the question for you all to discuss, but we're going to move on to the next slide and talk about charismatic leadership. Charisma is a form of intentional attraction that inspires support and acceptance. So charismatic leadership deals with charisma. And so the charismatic leadership theory says that leaders are likely to have more self-confidence, firm confidence in their beliefs, and a strong need to influence people. So there are 3 elements of charismatic leadership. You are able to envision likely future trends, set high expectations for your people, able to energize others and support them and empathize with them, and express confidence in them. So the book discusses different charismatic leaders. Martin Luther King, as well as Adolf Hitler. So not all charismatic leaders use their charisma for good, but that's something important to note. And then we have the attribution perspective on leadership, which says when behaviors are observed in the context associated with leadership, different people may attribute various levels of leadership or ability or power to the person displaying those behaviors. The book gives the example of seeing someone being assertive and other people are listening to them. So the people assume that he or she is a leader, but in a different context, they could see that person not being assertive and people are ignoring them and not listening. So others in the room would observe that that person is not a leader. And so the attributions people make affect both their actions as well as the capacity of the leader. This is very true in presidential campaigns as well. The book discusses how important it is for presidential candidates to put on an air of leadership. So we're going to go on to slide number 6, talking about alternatives to leadership. This is the first time I've ever heard about alternatives to leadership, so this was so interesting to me. Leadership substitutes is leadership behavior that might actually not be relevant in certain circumstances, which was blowing my mind. But if certain factors are present, the employee won't need the direction of a leader to complete their job. So different abilities of individuals' experiences, certain tasks, explicit plans and goals are all different examples of how leadership substitutes may be there. And so the book gives an example of the ER and how if a patient comes in bleeding and dying, that the nurses and the doctors will just take over and do their job. They won't need a leader. So we'll discuss a little bit more in the questions afterwards as well. But leadership neutralizers are factors that render ineffective a leader's attempts to engage in various leadership behaviors. The book gives the example of new and inexperienced leaders assigned to a work group that has very high cohesiveness. The leader attempts may be rendered ineffective. And so that is also super interesting that we certain times when leaders can't do their jobs, but they're trying. So we'll go on to number 7, the changing nature of leaders. So leadership as leaders as coaches. This was really cool and fascinating to me that we're moving into a time where leaders are taking on those attributes of coaches to help their teams do better. Just as there are bad coaches, though, a leader can be a bad leader if they're acting as a coach without keeping certain things in mind. They need to be picking team members that and providing those general direction for the team, training the team, developing their skills, and helping them get the resources that they need. The leader as a coach needs to be there to guide and give direction as well. Then we talked about in the book women in leadership and how they are not fitting all the stereotypes and how women are just rising in the ranks, and so we need to continue to encourage qualified women to pursue those leadership roles. And then cross-cultural and international leadership. But we are just having a more diverse workplace over and over again. We just see studies are saying that there's more diversity in the workplace, so we need to be more informed and ready to empower those leaders to lead their teams that are diverse and to be aware of that circumstance. And then we're going to go on to slide 8, which talks about emerging issues in leadership. Strategic leadership is only for top management, but it's the capability to understand the complexities of both the organization and its environment and lead change in the organization so as to achieve and maintain a superior alignment between the organization and the environment. So those with strategic leadership need to understand the environment and the organization so well that they're able to think strategically. And then we're also talking about ethical leadership. Ethical leadership is the process of leading based on consistent principles of ethical conduct, personally in light of the current just society that we live in. This is so important, especially as Christians, that we need to be never put in give a chance to others to question our moral beliefs, that we need to set that standard and show them why we act the way we do as Christians ethically. And then we'll talk about virtual leadership. It's leadership via distance technology. So that might be telecommuting and working with your leader via internet or phone. And it makes leadership so different. So leaders must take advantage of that time they have face-to-face with their people. Okay, and now on to our last slide, slide number 9. Number 1 is one example of a time in a workplace when leadership may not be necessary, i.e. the leadership substitute principle that we talked about. And please include an example other than the ER that we discussed earlier and that the book discusses. I'm just generally very interested in what you have to say. This is something I hadn't really heard about before or thought about. I'd love to hear more examples. And then part 2 of the question is, what do you think When it comes to transactional leadership and transformational leadership, what is more effective in the workplace and why? So please answer both questions. I'm super excited to hear about both of them. I've had so many discussions about transactional leadership and transformational leadership as discussed in my class. I'm really interested to see what you all have to say. And thank you so much for following along today. And good luck with the discussion board.